Hello and welcome to Udaiti Dialogues on Women and Economic Growth, a forum where we explore insights at the intersection of women, work, and growth through conversations with leaders from industry, government, and civil society to better understand what inclusive growth looks like as India progresses towards becoming Viksit Bharat. Today, I am delighted to be joined by someone whose career embodies the very best of public service. She has led teams and navigated decision making in the highest echelons of the government. She has instituted policies that have impacted millions of Indians. She has led transformative initiatives across health, nutrition, industrial growth, and women's empowerment. As secretary across multiple ministries like labor and employment, chemicals, women and child development, health, she has instituted reforms, she's championed reforms across a gamut of areas. I'm thrilled to welcome Arti Ahuja. Arti, a very warm welcome to Udaiti Dialogues.
Thank you so much, Pooja, for that warm welcome and that introduction, which I don't know if I deserve.
No, thank you for making time. And, we've been following your work. You've been such a big champion for women's economic participation. Not just that, actually, just also improving participation of different sets of individuals in the economy. So I'm really thrilled to be having this conversation today.
Thank you.
Arti, you've spent over 3 decades in the government. Let's start from the beginning, your journey. What was your journey like? What was your motivation to join the administrative services? When you joined, were there any surprises? And really give us behind the scenes look at what transpired as you made some of those decisions that would impact so many people.
Oh, there are so many memories. It's very hard to pick out a few. But I think if I were to go back to the first posting that I had, that was in Kalahandi, which was then synonymous with poverty and with starvation, etc. When I joined there, I was about 27 years old. And I remember going to a village where there was meningitis and there had been deaths due to meningitis. And I met a woman who looked old and she had 2 children and she was carrying another child. And I asked, or maybe she had more. And I asked her, how old are you? And she was 27. And she looked much older than I did. And I thought to myself that what I'm seeing here is just a lottery of fate. I could have been her, she could have been me. And these are my fellow citizens. And they haven't done anything to be like this. So I think that's what made me realize right in the beginning that I have to, put in my best effort. Whatever I can do. If I can move the needle only a little bit, so be it. It doesn't matter, but one has to give it one's all. And I think that first encounter with that lady really moved me and stays with me till now. I think about women's workforce participation. At that time, we were doing recruitment for Anganwadi workers at that time. A lot of bright young girls getting into the workforce and showing their mettle. And it was really driven home to me when I was later on in the health department of the state and the super cyclone happened in 1999. At that time, we didn't have any disaster management code and stuff like that. So I remember that after the cyclone was over, it took about more than 10,000 lives. So the Ersama block, which was the epicenter, I remember going there and going on a motorcycle because there were no roads, etc. And we had to do measles vaccination because there was a fear because people are staying in crowded areas. There could be a spread of the disease. So the ANMs and all were doing the vaccination, etc. In the break, I talked to one of the A&Ms and I said, "Oh, how are you?" And she told me that when the cyclone happened, she and her husband, they climbed the coconut tree and clung on to that. And then the waves came, the sea waves came, her husband was swept away. She saw him go, and her chest was abrased by clinging onto the coconut tree. And there she was, vaccinating children. I tell you, that kind of an experience does not go, ever.
Yeah.
And that is what I mean when I say that, women bring so much to wherever they are. It's not just about the earnings, it's about the social capital they create.
Yeah.
And there's evidence the world over. There are ILO studies and elsewhere that when they earn, they spend on their children's education, on health needs, and on other things. So it's not just about their own economic empowerment, it's about creating that capital in the society.
Right, right. Such vivid memories, right? When, especially from early on in the career, some of these memories and experiences actually shape the journey in significant ways. And, from that time, Arti, to now, we have seen a lot of change happen at the ground level, in women's participation, in women's access to infrastructure, services, etc. In fact, when you look at some of the numbers, the female labor force participation rate has gone up from 27% to 37%, and from 37 to 41.7% now, right? After being at about 25% for many, many years. What do you make of that increase? And do you still think, what kind of work do we need to do to move forward from here?
So let me say that I would ascribe it to 2 or 3 broad trends that have happened in our country. The first is that government has really worked at empowering women per se. Right? So because a lot of what holds women back is the societal pressures. PLFS data also shows that, right? So that women enter the workforce post children going to school. That's when the spike happens. So all the self-help group movement, for example, where women started doing micro enterprise, and you have lakhs and lakhs of women who are into that. Mission Shakti, for example, that I was associated with, the women are so strong. They are fully in the forefront and doing a lot of stuff that you thought only men were doing. Right? So that has created a base for them to go out. Even I would say giving cycles to girls for going to school. Their enrollment rates were going up. So over a period of time, the society has come to accept strong women more and more, which has been a platform for them to spring up from. Simultaneously, you will find that a lot of programs have enabled them to make use of the resources. The whole skilling ecosystem, for example. There are ITIs, especially for girls. There are other skilling programs, especially for girls. There is the whole higher education stream where more and more girls are encouraged to get into STEM. Right? So all these things have come together. And simultaneously, the third trend is India is a growing economy.
Yeah.
There are more jobs. We are now the 5th largest economy in the world, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. There are jobs.
Yeah.
Maybe not that many in manufacturing, but definitely in the services sector. And that's where more women also find opportunities to get employed. Yeah. So these trends have come together and we see more and more participation of women.
Right. And Arti, to your point, it's not just jobs right now, but there is this overwhelming sense of optimism that we can do it.
Yeah.
That, that this economic growth is happening. we have this large demographic dividend. We've been able to build this digital public infrastructure. The economy has been growing at a consistent pace, probably one of the few economies in the world that has consistently grown. So the difference that I see from the last decade and from other countries is that there is this overwhelming sense of optimism that yes, the jobs will come.
Yes.
And yes, we are going to continue to grow because all of the things are coming together at the right time, right?
Absolutely.
And when we, I'm still thinking about your kind of experience when you started out. And I think we've come a long way now when I talk to a lot of the women who are graduating from 10th grade, 12th grade, ITIs, polytechnics, sometimes even colleges. There is that sense of aspiration, ambition in them, desire to earn, desire to be financially independent. But there is also lack of access to some of these jobs. So I would hear in some of these conversations, they say, we really don't know what kind of opportunities we can tap into. And on the other side, when we speak to employers, there are so many employers right now who would say, look, we actually want women resumes. And it is really a supply problem. Yeah. So when you talk to the women and the girls, it seems like a demand problem. And when you're talking to the employers, it seems like a supply problem. How do you make sense of that demand-supply gap that seems to be there? And what can we do to really bridge that gap?
I agree with you, Pooja. That gap is there. Yeah. But that gap is there overall. Yeah. It applies equally to boys and men.
Right.
They also don't know what opportunities are available and where they are available. But for them, probably it's easier to move,
right,
to find those jobs through the migration happens through networks.
Yeah.
For girls, it becomes difficult. Unless at the destination point, there is adequate security and safety for them, and the parents feel that they can let this girl go and work.
Yeah.
Which is why you'll see in large phone manufacturing facilities, nearly 90% are women. Right? Similarly, in the apparel manufacturing, because a pattern has got established from the same villages, from the same districts, the girls come back and they tell, oh, it's very good there. You can go, right? So more and more girls feel emboldened to go, and their families feel that they can go. So this is an example of a coordination between the demand and supply, but it has taken time for that to stabilize.
Right.
What has not happened is the new jobs, right? Those are, I would say, the informal kinds in the care economy, the domestic work, again happens through networks and through trusted networks. But the other jobs on offer in the service sector, for example, or in other manufacturing, let's say the example of pharma. In other countries, the pharma industry employs about 60, 70, 80% are women. But in our country, it's very less. It's like not even 10 to
12%,
20%,
in the large enterprises.
Which is so less, right? Yeah. So the pharma industry, first of all, has to internalize that it makes good business sense,
right,
to employ more women, and then actively seek out. And that's not very difficult.
Yeah.
It's not difficult to seek out the right kind of candidates. And a lot of people are doing a lot of groundwork on that. It's just that the systems need to be set appropriately for that.
What role does data play there, Arti? So I'll come back to that question of, what can an organization do to dismantle some of those barriers? What can the sector as a whole do? And what can the ecosystem or the government do to enable that? But I think, just even having a baseline to start with is sometimes a challenge. And I think in India, one of the bright spots has been the digital public infrastructure over the last decade and a half. we are collecting all sorts of data now. Other stakeholders have access to it. But when it comes to gender, and especially women's economic participation, what role do you think data plays, and how can we make sure that we use some of that data for decision making at the right time?
I think you are alluding to the V index, your experience in UP.
Yes.
And definitely, once you have data, that evidence does inform policy making.
Right.
Let me give you a national example of e-Shram, which is a database of informal workers. And people self-registered on that. There is a listing of about 400 occupations, and they self-registered with their Aadhaar numbers. So you have this huge database of 30 crores, of which half are women who have registered. So one can tell occupation-wise, geography-wise, where the women are in what occupations. Why that is important? Because as per census over the years, women are the largest migrants. They migrate because they get married. They go to another place, right? But they also go for work, often with their families. So when they migrate, e-Shram is able to capture that data, because e-Shram is also now linked to all the states through the API interface. So you can know that somebody from place A has gone to place B and is working in, let's say, the construction sector, has 2 children. Those 2 children must be given their entitlements under ICDS, because ICDS ensures portability. The family must be given rations. The school-going children must be enrolled in school. If there's a language issue, then there should be that bridge course for them. So data becomes actionable.
Right.
Not just as evidence for doing something, but something that the states can act on in a very immediate and in a very localized manner.
Right.
And that's what enables. It creates a platform of enablement where, women individually can be contacted, and their entitlements and other things can be given to them.
And there are so many schemes that are meant to benefit women, right? And when you have data like that, then they can be directed appropriately.
Absolutely.
And coming to the second part of the question, when you brought up pharma, right? In the private sector, given that the government now has mandated that you need to do gender disclosure, the pay gap through your annual reports and BRSR reports, what that has enabled us is to create the whole close the gender gap dashboard, which now takes that information from silos and puts it together. So when you think about...
And I must chip in here and say that's excellent work.
Thank you.
I wish more people would see that.
Thank you. So on the pharma side now, what we have seen over the last 5 years, the percentage of women in large enterprises has gone from 8% to 12%. And then in working with some of the large companies, what we are realizing is that there are companies that are saying, look, we want to fix this. We want to have more women. But there are elements that cannot be addressed at the org level, and it has to be addressed at the ecosystem level, which might be that women just don't apply for some of those roles, like whether it might be women in sales and medical reps. They would just not apply for that. Women in manufacturing, some of the basic things that can be taken care of are washrooms for women, for example, on shop floors, and a lot of organizations are already beginning to do that. But at an ecosystem level, at the government level, I wonder what role can policy play in really unlocking this large talent pool, which is not taking advantage of this economic growth and also contributing to it in a meaningful way. And one example of a progressive regulation that came out is, of course, the labor codes. So, Arti, how do you think that will impact women's participation in Indian economy?
Yeah, while you were asking that question, I was thinking of the labor codes because that is going to bring about a fundamental shift in the way we approach work, in the way we approach women's work. So, to start with, the whole formalization of the relationship, not so much the enterprises, but that each employer-employee relationship will not remain informal. It will become formalized through appointment letters and such like. The other thing is that women's work has been given the same footing as other people, right? So equality in recruitment, in wages, etc., codified. You see sectors where, your own reports say, for example, logistics is a growing sector where women can be employed. What it has unlocked is, let's say, logistics or transport or other services. What it has unlocked is the night shift. Right. So women can work at any time, provided there is safety and security. The other thing of informal workers or even those in the manufacturing, women who work in small enterprises, in shops as salespeople or otherwise, what it does is that even if there are small clusters of MSMEs, they can pool together and build creches for them. Another, I think, the mindset change that this code will bring about is that a creche can be set up in a facility with 50 or more employees, not just women. What does it mean? It means a father can bring his child to a creche. So, these codes are going to bring together a lot of changes in the way work is perceived. It's going to unlock a lot of potential for women to enter the workforce. And I would say even the gig and platform economy. We see the delivery boys. We see others. We see other home-based services where women are there. But with the gig and platform work getting a legal definition with a social security component built in the social security code, right? There's going to be a corpus from which their social security will be provided for. It is a huge thing. And to my mind, I remember from our G20 discussions, at that time, there was no other country with similar provisions. So India is a forerunner in that. And this is again going to unlock a lot of potential for women to enter the workforce. Right. Even the paid maternity leave, the ability to work from home after the maternity leave is over. All these are very proactive steps that will bring more women into the workforce. And I think this is also the time that we are on a cusp. I keep talking about it, but Claudia Gordon's graph says that as incomes go up, so at low level of income, women's employment is high, then it comes down. Then again, when incomes go up, their employment goes up. We are at the cusp. Rising economy, more jobs. Labor codes have unlocked that. They are going to give a fillip to women's jobs. It is now time for the demand side to step up. The supply side will get unlocked. The women's aspirations that you talked about, the enabling environment that you talked about. But the supply side now has to step up and actively partner with the government, actively seek out women in more and more roles.
Right. I've been curious about this, Arti, is why is it that women end up being in informal roles a lot more than men, and why is formalization important?
I don't know why they are more in informal roles. Probably because it provides more flexibility to them. Because all said and done, the child rearing responsibilities, the household care responsibilities do fall on them. So a flexible schedule that is provided by an informal nature of work probably suits them better. Right? Which is not to say it's there for everybody, but yes, it does suit them better. And for formalization, like I mentioned, the apparel manufacturing or the phone manufacturing things, they are all formal employment.
Yeah.
Their PF, ESIC deductions happen, they are provided all the benefits, etc. So, that is the way that the employers will have to step in. And now ESIC and EPFO also maybe will be opened up to others.
Yeah.
ESIC definitely for informal workers.
Right.
So this is the time to take advantage of that and we have more and more formal arrangements.
So, Arti, one of the dilemmas in shaping policy, as I understand it, is striking the right balance between letting market mechanisms address the problem in due course or government stepping in to address the systemic inequities. And without that, it would just not get challenged or addressed. Given your long experience as a policymaker, how have you balanced it and struck that balance?
Okay, there are a lot of things I can think about, but let me draw on my experience in the health ministry during COVID.
Yeah.
It was an extreme situation, so not applicable to everyday situations, but that was a prime example of how government can be an enabler and the private sector rises to the challenge. Right? So we didn't have ventilators being made in India. They started being made. Even those dispensers, sanitizer dispensers, those little things that you press, they were not being made in India. The private sector set in. PPEs were not being made in India. The private sector stepped in. So it was an all of society approach, all of government approach. It was needed, it was an emergency. But we have seen that happen across. I'm just giving it as an example because it's fresh. But this all of society approach is there. What the labor codes will do is unlock it even more. See, the policy sets the standards. It sets the ecosystem for equity. The private sector, once so enabled, expands the whole ease of doing business. Now, for example, in the labor codes, the returns have come down to 1 from earlier 41. There were 1200 some odd sections which have now become 400 something. So the whole opening up of the economy will take place. The government has created that foundation and the private sector will take advantage of that.
Right.
Already we see in tier 2, tier 3 cities, so much of so much of startups are coming up, so much of work is happening, people are doing a lot of things. GCCs are opening up.
Yeah.
So there are opportunities everywhere. And the government policy unlocks those and has already unlocked them.
Right. And to extend that, Arti, when you, in a structure like India, where the policies come from the center, but a lot of execution will happen at the state level, what role do you think the state machinery will need to play in order to make sure that we can unlock the full benefits of the labor codes that have come out?
Yeah, so most of the state governments have their rules already for all the 4 codes which have been passed in their assemblies. In fact, many of the provisions in the labor codes, like that limit of 300 workers, that has already been passed by many assemblies. Right. So this was something that the states were already wanting to do. And there's an appetite for that in the states. And many have gone ahead and already done bits of what the codes are going to bring about. So the states are definitely on board in this.
Yeah.
In fact, in today's climate, you see the states are very eager to attract investors. Many of them have very liberal investment policies. Many of them also have special incentives for employing women.
Yeah.
Right? So the states are already walking that path. And the labor codes just provide a greater push and a greater legitimacy to do that now.
Yeah. And there were three areas related to women's employment, right? One was the night shift, The other was employment in hazardous industries and the overtime bit. One of the themes there is if the burden is passed on to the private sector, then we are back to square one, where, if you dismantle that kind of night shift policy, but say that the private sector is, or an employer is responsible for safe transport to back to home, then again there is a reluctance on the part of employers to employ women. How do we address something like that?
Because it is not a burden. It is not a burden to employ a woman. It makes good business sense. There are numerous studies which tell that employing women leads to higher profits. And not just on the shop floor, in managerial positions as well. So this is something that the businesses need to internalize. Why is it that in other countries, the footwear manufacturing or the automobile or the pharma have so many women employed? It's not that their social status is drastically different.
Yeah.
It's because the businesses there understand that it makes good business sense to employ them. And their productivity goes up, their profits go up. It makes good business sense for them to invest in those women by way of transport, by way of better housing, by way of toilets.
Yeah.
I think this is something that the businesses have to internalize and to understand.
And that is something we see even, companies that are making a focused effort on a more gender balanced workforce. Some of the things we hear over and over again is women do well in high precision jobs. When women join the workforce, culture generally improves. Absenteeism goes down. So some of those things we continuously hear again and again. But I think the question is, how do we ensure that then it spreads across the sector, and a majority of companies begin to disclose their gender data and create action plans to dismantle some of the pre-existing barriers.
True. And I think companies also need to address the barriers in their own minds.
Right.
Because as I said, we are on a cusp. There's a tide in the affairs of men, and in this case, women. And if we lose it, we are going to lose a huge dividend that we are sitting on.
Right.
And we are all citizens. The people who run the companies are citizens. And I think they need to internalize that now is the time to take advantage of what the law has to offer, what the ecosystem has to offer. Even the Startup India, for example, has separate things for women entrepreneurs, the whole Mudra scheme. There's so much that's happening for women. So this is the time that they also should step in, and it's a win-win for them. It's not a loss-making proposition to employ women. And I don't even say that substitute men's job with women's job. Men also need to work, and so do women. But there are a lot of jobs that are coming up. So consider them for those jobs.
Yeah. Arti, this has been such an energizing conversation, and it feels like we covered a lot of ground, from your initial anecdote about the challenges that women faced to how far we have come. What is your sense of what more do we need to do to really bring alive this vision that the country is right now kind of focused on, the vision of Viksit Bharat?
Couple of things. The first is, let's come to the codes. Now the inspectors are called inspectors cum facilitators. So going from inspection to a facilitator role is something that requires a huge transition here.
Right.
And that is those, mental models are very hard to let go of.
Yeah.
So systems will have to be set, transparent systems. The codes also provide for random inspections and such like. But that huge workforce of inspectors, to become facilitators will require a lot of work. And states will have to actively work on that. The other thing is, I feel that there are people on the margins that we often forget because they are on the margins. They fall through the cracks. Take the example of people who work in brick kilns, or people who live in remote tribal areas, people who migrate and stay 10 people to a room in an urban area, or women who are working on a construction site. We have heard horror stories of how the child was mauled by a dog. So those are the people on the margins. The law provides for them. We just have to do it. And everybody has to feel responsible for that. The private sector has to feel responsible. The civic society has to feel responsible. Government, of course, is always responsible. So they all have to come together for this.
Right.
And I think, lastly, I think what also we need to now do is that, having created this kind of a level playing field in a way, the society also has to step up by way of providing security to women.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing of somewhere, that women not feeling safe and secure in their own country is not something we should tolerate any longer.
Right.
We probably need to have much stronger voices and much stronger campaign that, women feel safe in their own home, in their own country.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of country we should become.
Absolutely. And truly, if we design for the safety of women, it's good for humanity. It's good for everyone.
Everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it is extremely important that these gender norms that are in our mind and that are embedded in the systems, our policies, our infrastructure, given that the framework now exists, we use that to dismantle some
Absolutely. I think everybody needs to unchain their minds.
of them. Right.
The families, the girls themselves, and the society at large.
Absolutely. Arti, I truly loved the conversation today. Thank you for sharing your story. Also, what it takes to move ideas from policy to execution, and the big, bold bets we need to make in order to use our gender dividend and this untapped pool of talent of women judiciously. I'm truly optimistic at this stage. However complex the problem of women's participation in the economy seems to be, we are really getting to a shared understanding of the problem and some of the solutions we need to bring to bear in order to solve for it. Government is actively seeking input from the industry. Private sector is leaning in. And with that, it really seems like the goal of 70% women's participation in the economy by 2047 is within reach. So thank you so much for coming today and sharing your insights. And thank you for joining us on Udaiti Dialogues on Women and Economic Growth.